We're going to spend this week and next week in Proverbs 31, and it's a very easily outlined chapter. The first 9 verses are what I've called wisdom for kings. The last 22 verses are the Proverbs 31 woman, the virtuous woman, the excellent woman. There's a number of ways that you can title this, but that's really, it's a simple outline of this chapter. So let me read verses 1 through 9. It says, the words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him. What, my son, and what, son of my womb, and what, son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, nor your ways to that which destroys kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink, lest they drink and forget the law, and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to those who are bitter of heart. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. Open your mouth for the speechless, and the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. So there's a lot packed in here. There's some challenging things right off the bat as well. We walk through this text and we see the recipient is King Lemuel. And does anybody remember Lemuel in Israel's history? Which king he was? Yeah, that was a trick question. There was no king in Israel's history named Lemuel. We don't know who he is. Some do speculate that this was a nickname for Solomon. We have no biblical evidence for that. We don't have any biblical evidence against it. We just don't know. And so because we have no evidence that this is Solomon, I prefer just to take it as an unknown king. Verse 1, who is the speaker in this chapter? Lemuel is the repeater of what his mother has said. So ultimately, this is his mother's words. These are, it does say the words of King Lemuel. This is what he is writing down, but he's writing down what his mother taught him. And so this is actually very, very important. As we're thinking through even the virtuous woman, this is not Lemuel's writing. This is not Lemuel's ideas, this is not what Lemuel said. This is my ideal wife. This is his mother's instruction to him. And so, of course, since we don't know who Lemuel is, we don't know who his mother is. I think it is very noteworthy. This is the only place in the book of Proverbs where the mother speaks alone. When you have a parental figure speaking in Proverbs, it is the father alone or the father and the mother. This is the only place where the mother speaks alone. Now, in Proverbs, there is a lone female voice that often shows up. Who is the female speaks, is particularly earlier in Proverbs? Who is that? Yeah, that is wisdom. Wisdom is portrayed as a woman. She cries out. She invites the foolish to come and learn wisdom from her. But as far as parental figures go, this is the only time the mother speaks alone. And you look at verse 2. What kind of proverb is that? It's a 3-line proverb. But what kind of proverb is that? Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's a building proverb. What, my son? And then there's what, son of my womb? And then there is, and it's moving, I would say, a deeper intensity, deeper importance, what, son of my vow? So it's not just that you are my son, but you're my son from my husband. This is, if you will, you are our child. And that there's bringing in this deep relationship, this deep affection, somewhat so that the mother is basically saying, I raised you, you better listen to me. But it is much more than that. It is also, though, it is corrective. It very much is a corrective here that, and in fact, it says in verse 1, the utterance which his mother taught him. That word taught is the word that is used frequently throughout the book of Proverbs for correction. Not just simply instruction where I'm imparting information, but where I am correcting behavior and then providing proper instruction. And so it's very much a correction here. It's very much affectionate. The call here to, son of my womb, son of my bowels, there's a deep relationship here. There's a love here. The mother is not just addressing him, not just rebuking him, but is affectionately doing so. She has his interest in mind. And so that she is pleading as his mother. The subject matter here is the behavior of kings. So verses 3 through 9 is Lemuel's mother is pleading with him to behave properly as a king. And she gives him now several instructions and reasons for that. So the first instruction is do not give. Two things. Do not give your strength to women. So verse 3. Do not give your strength to women. I maybe put it in more modern terms, do not be a womanizer. What happened in David's kingdom because of his sin with Bathsheba? Absalom comes in, takes over Jerusalem. David flees. There is civil war in the nation right then. And then as soon as that is over, there are those in the northern kingdom, some of the tribe of Benjamin that rebelled against David, and there is a continued civil war in Israel because of David's sin. What happened in Israel because of Solomon's many, many wives and concubines? Yeah, the kingdom is divided. And more than that, idolatry was brought into the nation. The nation was crushed under the taxes of Solomon. If you remember with the division of Israel and Judah, they came to Rehoboam, all of the nation came to Rehoboam and said, lessen our taxes, they're burdensome. And the kingdom split because Rehoboam said, nope, I'm going to impose more taxes on you. I'm going to crush you down further with it. The nation suffered because of Solomon and David's sin with women. Now, I don't think anybody's going to go this far, but at least nobody here goes this far, but this does not mean that a single woman is going to destroy a king. It's not that females are inherently dangerous to good politics. And there's a reason from this chapter that we know that. One reason I say there's two in this chapter, but what are the reasons from this chapter that this is not just a blanket condemnation of women in general? Yeah, this is King Lemuel's mother giving him this good advice about how to rule. And so she says, do not give your strength to women, do not give your ways to women. And I think there's a parallel, really there's a developing parallelism here in which he said, don't give your strength to women nor your ways to that which destroys kings. I think in both lines there, it's still talking about women and immorality, and that by practicing the immorality that was so prevalent in that culture. And that was part of how everybody knew you were a great king. You had a huge harem. And she says that is, it saps your strength and it destroys kingdoms. She says it will destroy him if you pursue this. And again, Solomon is a great example of this. The only reason he did not lose his kingdom was because of God's covenant with David. If it had not been for that, Solomon would have been destroyed in his own lifetime. His kingdom would have suffered and split. And so she says, it's an affirmation of the Old Testament law, the law of Moses, that kings are not to multiply wives. And of course, it is an affirmation of the sanctity of marriage, that God created man and woman, joined one man and one woman in marriage. And that is the pattern. It's not just the ideal, it is the pattern that is established for every relationship, every intimate relationship. And every marriage is one man, one woman, and that's it. And so she is affirming that as destructive to the nation if you violate it. And I think we ought to think seriously about this as we think about our own culture. Do we consider the morality, the marital fidelity of any of our leaders? Really, do we? How many times has our current president been divorced? I don't actually know, but I know he's been divorced. And I don't think he's been a pattern of sexual faithfulness throughout his life. And we can go back through presidents and the very famous scandal with Bill Clinton. And so if our president is presently unfaithful, that matters. But we think about that, and you think through, when was the last time anybody really cared about the fidelity of a president? I mean, you go, well, I won't trace their history. We can think through the sordid history of American presidents, and it's really not good. And we can't look at that and say, well, it's just, their private lives. It didn't really affect anything. I'm sure there are things we don't know about. There were immoral relationships that we know nothing about, but it absolutely affects our nation. And that's part of what Lemuel's mother is telling him. His morals matter for his entire nation. And she also says, verse 4, it is not for kings, O Lemuel, to drink. Not for kings, O Lemuel, it's not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink. So as another example of the building parallelism. And so we see her saying, not for kings to drink wine. And then she gives some more specificity to it, and princes intoxicating drink. And she gives here more reasons, and spend most of her time really on this. So even though verse 3, it's a very important warning, most of this section is addressing specifically drunkenness and justice. That's what this really revolves around. And she tells him, don't drink lest you forget the law and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. So remember, the king is really the final court. When there's any issues in the kingdom that need to be addressed, there's legal questions that come up that often were brought before the king. And he is going to be the one who's making the decision. And she says here that if you do this, if you are drinking, then you're going to forget the law and going to distort or alter justice. William McCain, I think, said it very well. Wine is a threat to a king's integrity. So we talk about justice. Do we think about the sobriety of those who are administering justice? Does it matter? And I realize in this setting, in the setting of Proverbs 31, the king was the law. There was not the written documents like we have that ordered justice. So the king really could be much more arbitrary just because he wanted to, because he liked somebody, because they paid him off, whatever. He could be having a bad day and make a decision, and that's it. There's no other appeal. There's no recourse. He made that decision, and it's done. And we live in a society where there is volumes and volumes and volumes of written law that order the decisions that are being made. So in many respects, our judges have much less freedom in administering justice. There are many more sources of appeal if a poor decision is handed down. But again, I think it matters the sobriety of those who are administering justice. It still impacts those that are bringing their cases before them. And the issue here is, it says, perverts the justice of all the afflicted. Part of the point that Lemuel's mother is making, what she is reminding him, it is the king's duty to make sure that the poor, the oppressed, the needy receive justice, that they are given fair treatment, that they are not found against, they are not punished unnecessarily. They are not the ones who lose out simply because they're poor and because this guy has all the money. She is telling Lemuel it is his responsibility to make sure that the poor receive justice regardless of their status in society. And so she says, do not drink, because the drunkenness will affect justice. And that really, I won't belabor this point, but it very much was reality in that day. The king sitting on his throne, and he's sitting there drinking. And he could be drunk. Nobody's going to say anything. Nobody can say anything. So in a very real sense, a drunkard as a king, he could be ruling, making decisions in his drunken state. And there's no recourse. So she does say, and this is where it gets a little bit it gets very challenging. I shouldn't say a little bit challenging. She does say give. Still talking about wine. Give wine to the afflicted. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to those who are bitter of heart. Let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his mercy no more. Give strong drink to him who is perishing. Literally, it's to the sons of destruction. Give strong drink to those ones. And there are some who have said this is a sarcastic command. That she's not meaning it literally, but it's just being sarcastic. Well, fine, if they're that, we'll just go give them more. Wine is so destructive to the king, just give the ones who are perishing wine. And I don't think it's intended to be a sarcastic command. It's intended to be read in any way other than it is stated. Nor does it really say that these ones are drunkards either. And so even Jim's thought there of, they're already doing it, so let's give them more and give them more so they hit the bottom, and maybe one day they'll wake up in the gutter and look up and realize that they need a better path of life. It doesn't, there's not a suggestion in this that they are themselves drunkards. That's why being said here. It seems, really what it does seem to be is first the medicinal use of drugs. And so, which I don't know that anybody really has any issue with that. There you're giving that strong drink to the one who is dying, so that it is alleviating the pain of their death. And just like we administer morphine and a variety of other drugs and medications to people, so that it really is what we would call palliative care, just making them more comfortable until the end. And so I think there is a valid argument here for that kind of medicinal use, both of alcohol, and I think we can rightly apply it to stronger things, even though that's not the subject here. But we also, that phrase, bitter of heart, that doesn't sound like one who is dying. Sounds like one who is depressed. Sounds like one who is, maybe because of his situation, that he is just in deep, deep despair. And I will say this, I want to say this very carefully, because this is building any kind of a substantial doctrine simply from a single proverb is unwise. But it does seem that there may be an argument to be made here for what we call psychotropic drugs. in certain cases. Those psychotropic drugs are those mood-altering drugs that really do just make someone, I'd say, more mellow. I don't think they make anybody happy, but I do think they kind of mellow out at times the extremes of emotions there. And so it may justify limited use. I would certainly, and so when I say psychotropic drugs, I don't think that we are at all in our society following anything like the principles laid out here. I think we are prescribing psychotropic drugs left and right because it's convenient, or because somebody is just unhappy and there's not really, we're not going to willing to try any other solutions. We're just going to medicate them, and we see significant consequences in people's lives because of their medications that they're on. We see that, and I'm sure you've all seen those who just seem numb. They go through life and they really can't seem to process anything, don't process anything. They just almost zombie-like moving through life because of the medications they're on. And we, instead of teaching people self-discipline, we prescribe them and say, or we diagnose them as ADHD, and here you go, here's your meds. And so I don't want to use this verse in any way to justify how we are currently handling emotional problems. But it does seem as if there is a point here that is being made of, in certain seasons of deep despair, that medication, psychotropic drugs, may have a place. And I'm putting a lot of mays, maybes, ifs, possiblies in there, because I want to be very careful with that. And I honestly, I don't have the medical knowledge in this field at all. I don't have medical knowledge in any field, but particularly this field, to say too much about it. So I can't speak to case studies or anything regarding that, but it does seem that there's a justification here in severe cases to provide some sort of medical or drug, some sort of drug assistance to help them with that. So if you disagree with that completely, that's fine. As I said, this is an area, there's one proverb. It's not really clear exactly who is being talked about, who are the bitter of heart, what makes them bitter of heart. And so, as I said, we cannot build a full doctrine from this, but it does seem to point in a direction. So she goes on and also says to give to them justice. And this is one reason I do not read this as sarcastic or even as fatalistic or that they deserve this, just let them drink themselves into a stupor and that's all they get. Because she immediately turns and says, open your mouth for the speechless in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. So she says here, give justice to those who need it. Speak on behalf of the speechless. That the king's task is to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Now this really is countercultural and has been throughout all of history. That the king, the most powerful one in the kingdom, is the advocate of the weakest ones in the kingdom. Now, I know there have been a lot of cultures that have written that in their laws in various ways, and there's often been an ideal, but how much has it actually been in practice? I mean, even considering American justice, that is an ideal, that we speak for those who are unable to speak for themselves. But how well do we do that? And how frequently do we see the president of the nation speaking up for those who are truly poor, downtrodden, the oppressed, and the crushed? And we see it more than many other countries. We see it more than has been throughout history. But still, I don't think we would receive a passing grade if we were to measure and to grade how well we're doing on that. I still say we might be doing better than everybody else, but we're still failing. And so she says, speak on behalf of the speechless. Speak for those who are near death, those who are appointed to die. So, we don't know why. Why are they at the verge of death? Are they impoverished and starving? That's very likely. Are they under some sort of sentence of death? It's a bit vague, but he is to speak up for those who are close to death, to judge righteous judgment, to now prescribe that which is proper, that which is in accord with the law. So if Lemuel is a nickname for a king of Israel or Judah, what law would he be judging according to? Yeah, he'd be judging according to the Mosaic law. And so there is a clear standard of how law is to be applied. There is case law in the Mosaic law to teach how to apply this in a variety of circumstances. Of course, there are the absolute laws, thou shalt not kill, that give the broad principles as well that guide the king in his judgments. And he is to judge in accord with the Mosaic law. He is to judge in righteousness. That's what that gets down to. And to speak on behalf of the afflicted and the destitute. Those are the poor and the needy, the lowest of the earth, the ones who everybody else overlooks. The homeless, the ones that nobody cares about, the drug addicts that are just lying in some hallway in some dark apartment building. Those are the ones who they're supposed to be speaking up for. So that instead of, by his immoral ways or drunken ways, and remember when we're dealing with Proverbs, we're finding specific situations that teach general principles. So we cannot limit this and just say, well, as long as he's not immoral and he's not a drunk, it's okay. But rather, there's specific situations that illustrate the king should do nothing that is going to hinder his execution of justice, that are going to hinder his judgment, so that he is not distracted, he's not led astray, should not do anything that is going to weaken his rule, but rather he should exercise great care that he rule with rightful power and with proper justice. So we're talking politics emotionally. And again, there's a lot that we can bring into our nation, which I'm going to end with here. But there's these examples here of the king do teach us some things for our own daily life. And so some of what we do, don't let substances affect your judgment. Really, that's a vital one as we think through our lives and the choices we make. We have to make judgment calls routinely. We are determining between the right and the wrong response, the right or the wrong decision. And we must be very careful, and we must recognize that the things we do put in our body affect that. And that's, I'll just talk about marijuana. It's still a prolific problem, and it's not getting any better, not going to get better, seemingly, because we have legalized something which absolutely distorts judgment. It does not make people more clear thinking. It does not help them determine what is right and wrong. Whether or not it helps ease his pain or not, I can't speak to him. I know now that the anecdotal data is beginning to become contradictory, but it does not aid in proper judgment, in understanding of the choices before you. Why would we, as Christians, why would we promote it? Why would we accept it? Why would we participate in it? I mean, the principle that is here for this king is one that should apply to our own lives. We talk about alcohol in the same way. And so even here with the prescription to give alcohol to the dying and to the despairing, we also have to read that in light of Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 1, Proverbs 23, 29 through 32. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging. He who is deceived by it is not wise. And so we recognize, even in this discussion, that alcohol is a mind-altering substance that does cloud judgment. Do what is right and just. I mean, that's I think the obvious corollary from the first point. Just do what is right. Do what is just. Look out for the little guy. As partially because we live in a democratic a nation, which allows us to vote, which gives us a great influence and involvement in our own governance, we should be considering, what does this do to the poor, the needy, the drug addict, the despairing? What does this do to those who are not getting justice? We should be, not just in our votes, but in our own interactions with individuals, we should be thinking, this guy has nothing to offer. He has no recourse. So he can't sue me. So am I going to go ahead and take advantage of him? Of course not. We absolutely should not, but instead should defend him from those who would take advantage of him. Help the hurting. Again, just another way of saying what I've already said before, but we're looking to those who are suffering, those who are if we take it beyond just poverty, we take it to those who are in deep despair, those who physically are hurting. Seek to offer help, what help we can to them. And then wrap back around to where we started, forsake those habits which hinder your ability to do what you ought to do. So whatever the habit may be, if it's hindering your ability to do what you ought. So, and I don't think anybody here is addicted to online gaming, but I'll pick on that for a second. So you spend all of your time playing Super Mario Brothers. I don't know if anybody even plays that, but whatever the latest online game is, Halo or Call of Duty or whatever the other ones may be. If that is taking so much time in your life that you are not doing what you ought to be doing, don't do it. Throw away I don't even know if they have CDs anymore. Throw away the CD, cancel the subscription. Don't play the games if they're hindering your ability. So maybe to meddle a little bit more, Wordle or Bubble Pops or whatever the other weird games on Facebook may be. If you spend all of your time or so much of your time playing the little games that it hinders your ability to do what you should be doing, delete the app. Throw your phone in the lake. Whatever you need to do. Don't do it. Forsake those habits which hinder your ability to do what you ought. And then wisdom for voting. These are questions we should be asking as Christians. And we really should. Is he a womanizer? And I do recognize this, as we're talking about these questions, that there is so much information out there and so much information that contradicts itself. That we're not going to be able in many of these cases to say definitively yes or no. But I do think as far as it goes, we should be saying, it really seems like it. That's a credible witness that yes, he is a womanizer. Yeah, that's a question we need to be seriously considering. And say, well, the other one's worse. That's a different issue. But these are questions we should be asking. What is his marital faithfulness like? And not because if he's unfaithful to his marriage vows, he's not going to be faithful to his vows to the country. That may or may not be true. What are his morals like? Because morals have consequences. They have divine consequences. We've seen this throughout the book of Proverbs. And so the choices that our leaders make have profound impacts on their own lives, their decisions for the country, and I think they have profound impacts on the country in ways that we don't even begin to really see. There's connections there that we don't recognize, we can't recognize, but that they have a profound effect on the well-being of our country because of their immoral choices. Is he a womanizer? Is he an addict? And again, I don't mean is he on cocaine or meth. Is he a drunkard? Does he get stoned every weekend? That matters. And I think we probably see the obvious connection with that one. You don't want somebody sitting down at high-level negotiations with Iran and knowing that he smoked a joint right before he walked in. We don't want that. We recognize it's just immediately self-defeating. We should be asking these moral questions. Does he speak on behalf of the weak and defenseless? Does he oppress them? Does he abuse them? Does he mock them? Or does he speak up in behalf of them? Does he aid the suffering? Does he work and does he promote things which actually minimize the suffering of individuals? And this is where we look past the rhetoric, because every politician says I'm going to make life better. What are the actual effects of policies? Very few of the policies that we see now are brand new. They've been around in various forms for a very long time. We're able to see the effects of their policies. So what are the consequences of their policy on the well-being of individuals in a nation? Is he promoting policies that will promote well-being or not? Does he promote justice? I mean, really, is he doing those things which are promoting what is right and good? Does he promote individuals within his own cabinet who are promoting righteousness, or is he just handing out favors to people? Does he seek righteousness? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a president that seeks righteousness with all of his heart? And I know we get to that last question, we say, well, no. There's not any politicians, seemingly, there are not any politicians, at least in the national level, that really, truly seeks righteousness. But we should still be seeking those who seek righteousness. And we should be asking these questions. And it may make our decisions harder when we get ready to vote, but we still should be asking these questions because these things matter in the lives of those who govern our nation.